The next lecture will be Ambassador Michel Revel. He is Israel's ambassador to Cyprus. After joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1987, he has been a talented representative of Israel in Manila, the Philippines, in Doha, Qatar, in Paris, France, and in the European Union and NATO in Brussels. While winning awards for his service to Israel, he is also a published author of 2 books. Shmuel, please.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here for my father's 80th birthday. Of course, after all this talk about science today, I will try to take you a few thousand kilometers above the surface of Earth, trying to explain to you why science and innovation and why it's so important for Israel's future, and I believe also to the future of the relations between Israel and Europe, and more so, if we want to be very ambitious, to the future of the global order, to the future of the world. Of course, this is mainly a professional presentation, but everything in life is personal, and everything starts from a personal angle. Everything starts from home. Exactly 50 years ago, my parents, Professor Michel Revel and my mother, Claire Revel, decided to leave France to come to settle in Israel. They left everything behind. They believed truly that the Jewish people should live here in Israel, in the land of the Jewish people. But they also came here to do science. My father was already at the time a very talented scientist doing molecular biology in the National Scientific Research Center in France. My mother was doing biophysics. And they wanted to continue to do science in Israel, to continue to do it here. And by doing so, they believed also that they will be able to continue to be a bridge between Israel and Europe. They didn't look only to stay here in Israel and detach themselves from Europe. They wanted very much to continue the link with Europe, the link with the culture, with the language, with the science, and this is how they pursued their lives. And actually, a few years after we arrived, I was still a very small child at the time, the Yom Kippur War broke out. And I don't know if you know a story, Golda Meir flew one day to Washington and talked to the Henry Kissinger, which was Secretary of State of the United States, and asked him for some more weapons for Israel to save itself, because Israel was in a very dire military situation. And she told him, Dr. Kissinger, we really need more weapons. And he told her, Golda, you know, she was a very big nudnik, what we say, you know. She couldn't be a nudge. He told her, Golda, but I already gave you so many weapons. How much more do you need? He says, Dr. Kissinger, I really apply to your Jewish conscience. I told her, dear Golda, you know, number one, I'm an American citizen. Number two, I'm the Secretary of State of the United States of America. And only number three, I'm Jewish. And Golda said to Henry, Henry, that's great, because we read from right to left. So this is the way of my parents. They know how to read from left to right, but also from right to left. And I don't speak only about their literacy skills. This is a way of thinking, of looking at things from both directions in a very humanistic way, in a way which believes in true dialogue between different cultures and civilizations. And this is why I believe that my father's work, my mother, are a very strong inspiration for the need to continue to reinforce the relationship between Israel and Europe in the fields of innovation and science. We always have to start by some lesson of history. And when we look at Europe as it is today, Europe is a creation of a very big ambition after the Second World War, after the destruction of the Shoah, after everything that happened in Europe, people like Jean Monnet, like Schumann, believed that there should be a new beginning to Europe. And this new beginning is to cooperate around fields which have true joint interests. It's not just enough to lecture about love and peace and intercultural dialogue. We have to create real interests that will bind people together. And they saw the main interest in Europe at the time as coal and steel and European cooperation, and they decided to launch the Rome Treaty, which was really a landmark in the creation of Europe as we know today. Since that landmark, Europe moved in a very considerable way forward to more and more integration in economic fields, in scientific fields, and also in monetary fields in the Eurozone, in which today 19 European countries cooperate. And as you can see, in a central place in this architecture, you will find research, technological development, and research and development cooperation on space issues. Because for Europe, it was clear already a long time ago that it's not enough only to work on economics, coal and steel and infrastructure, and even a common currency is not enough. If you really want to build a common future, you have to bring the scientists, the minds of the people, the young generation, the future generation, to work together. And this is only possible if you cooperate on research, technological innovation, and space. For Israel, I have to say, this was clear from the very beginning. Out of all the countries in the world, Israel was the third country to recognize the importance of the Rome Treaty. We were the third country to recognize it and to sign diplomatic relations with the newborn European community. Of course, it has also a lot to do with the Shoah, with the Holocaust. For Israelis, to relaunch the relationship with Germany bilaterally was very difficult. But doing it in a European framework was much easier. But I believe it was much more than that. It was a true belief that the future of Israel lies in commercial relations with Europe. And it has to be said that today, if you look at the relationship between Israel and Europe, we have also, of course, a very important political dialogue, not always an easy one, I have to say. But we have what is very important, an extensive commercial cooperation. About 1/3 of Israel's exports and imports are with the European Union, and we have a very strong cooperation in R&D. And actually, after we signed the most ambitious agreement with the European Union back in 1995, the association agreement of Israel with the European Union and its member countries, at the same time exactly, we signed the cooperation of Israel in the R&D framework program. And Israel joined the framework program already in the 90s. The first time was in the fourth framework program. That was an initial stage where Israel learned how to play a role in it. And maybe the last few years teach us that this cooperation is only growing. If you take FP7, the framework program number, the seventh framework program of the European Union, Israeli scientists and companies participated in 1,537 projects in a total sum of 800 million euros. You know, maybe it's just figures, but beyond these figures, we are talking about huge amounts of networking, of scientists working together, groups of Israeli scientists working in diverse fields in order to cooperate with European colleagues to develop the technologies of the future. And today, in the eighth framework program, which is called Horizon 2020, this is only getting stronger, and we can see the figures that we have until now, which are very promising for the continuation of Israel's participation. In different fields, I have to say, of course, we're talking about medical research, biotechnology, but also IT, food tech, energy, space, and many, many others. Of course, the cooperation with the framework program of the EU is just part of the story. The bigger story is this. In recent years, and as was said, I had the luck to be both in Brussels and in Paris, and now I'm in Cyprus, and I don't know to tell you which one is the best, but I can tell you that in each one of these postings, I was exposed to a very extensive network of Israeli scientists working with local colleagues. Yes, even in Cyprus, many, and even today we had a conversation in the coffee break about some of these projects. And more than that, this network of cooperation is really today, I would say, the backbone of our relationship with Europe. You can have differences on political issues, but there is no problem at all for Israeli scientists to participate, in CERN in physics, or to go to Brussels to participate in the space satellite navigation systems, or whatever technology is out there. It's not that Israel is knocking on the door. Europe is interested, and European countries are interested. You see these arrows are bidirectional. Israel is interested in Europe, but Europe is very much interested in your Israeli technology. And of course, my father, throughout his career, played a very important role. This is a picture taken in the award ceremony that my father received in Paris when I was stationed there by the AMIF, the Association of the Médecins Israélites de France, which recognized in contribution to the cooperation in medical research between Israel and France. This was his own contribution, but also today I try to complement it in my daily work. Today I'm stationed in Cyprus, as I said, and together with my wife, Osnat, which I thank her very much for being there with me all the time. We work daily in order to cement the relationship. And it's not just a slogan. Of course, there are very strong energy cooperation with Cyprus. We today are lucky to have natural gas reserves in the Mediterranean, and we exploit them together with Cyprus. We're talking about mega-billion projects. We have hundreds of thousands of Israeli tourists, which are, even some of them at this moment, on the beaches in Cyprus, enjoying the sunshine. And Israeli hotel chains are building hotels in Cyprus. All of this is very important. But when I go to the office in the morning, my first question is, what can I do to cement the relations in the field of innovation and science? Of course, this has a lot to do with my upbringing, but also to my belief, as I said, that this is very important for the future. Because energy is important, tourism is important, everything is important. But if we really want to work towards the future and inspire the next generation, the young people out there in the universities, we have to talk about science and innovation. All of this has been a great contribution to Israeli industry. Today, innovation is a very important factor in the success story of the Israeli economy. Israel, if you take ratings and you have to, statistics, you have to take them with a grain of salt, but all the time, Israel is up there when it comes to global innovation index, to the amount of business expenditure on R&D, to the capacity for innovation as declared by the World Economic Forum. You always see Israel at the top of the list. And it's something that makes us proud, but it also contributes a lot to our economy. Of course, today you would find many R&D, multinational R&D centers in Israel, Google, Alcatel, Dell, Dassault from France. Of course, I think Merck also has one. And we heard Dr. Klaus Urbahns lecture before about the cooperation with Merck, Nestle, Siemens. And talking about my father, I'm particularly proud about one fact. When we saw this morning, in the presentation, Interfarm. Interfarm was not only a multinational R&D center in Israel, but it actually was a manufacturing center which started in Israel and then became multinational. It was really a real true manufacturer here created from scratch on Israeli territory. So that's, I think, a very big source of pride for me, as my father played such a big role in this development. Today also, of course, we talk about 5,000 startups in Israel, and again, here, Kadimastem is one of them, and I believe one of the more interesting ones, but I'm not objective. But we have many, many startups in fields of IT, medtech, cleantech, and many more, which are continuing the tradition of Israel's role in this R&D field. And when we look also at the private sector and venture capital invested in R&D, you'd see that Israel is up there together with major European, maybe it's not very clear, but we're talking about France or Germany, United Kingdom. Israel is up there playing a very important role. So I could conclude my lecture here and say, may we live happily ever after. But since I see the next generation of the family here in the crowd, I can guarantee that you also have a very big challenge in front of you. It's not an easy challenge. It's maybe even bigger than the ones that we know before. And these new challenges are connected to not only to making our lives better or not even more secure, but to ensure the basic needs of life in this region around the Mediterranean. And I'm not saying it lightly. I look today at what's happening in Europe, and I think many Europeans are looking and saying, we have a reason to worry. And the reason to worry is that today, while Israel and Europe are developed economies, working well, working together, when we look around us, we see that there is increased poverty, increased even lack of possibility to live. And again, I'm not saying it lightly. Statistics show that in Egypt, in Algeria, in Libya, even in Syria, in the next 25 years, the population will grow by 45%. Even only in Egypt, the population grows by about 1 million people a year. To create this number of jobs needs, economists calculate, about 7 to 8% of growth, economic growth. But today we see that not only it's very hard to achieve these figures, we see a growing problem of global warming. We see a global problem in the Mediterranean region of drought. And we see that these phenomena is creating a very big immigration towards Europe and creating a lot of war. Most experts agree today that the phenomena that once was called the Arab Spring, or some wanted to call the Arab Winter, actually started also because of problems of drought, of warming, people not being able to cultivate their farms, continue their way of life, and that creates a lot of the wars that we see around us in Syria or in Yemen or in Libya. If people don't have any other ways to live, they either take the first ship that might bring them to Europe, or, unfortunately, clashes begin. And in order to deal with this problem, Europe, again, has to raise its level of cooperation. But instead, what we see, and this is another reason to worry, is that BREXIT, and I'm bringing BREXIT just as an example, because it is an example of how populism grows also on the other side. People see what's happening in the Arab world, in Africa. They see the immigration. Some of them feel in Europe that this touches on their very way of life, of the capacity to continue to live in this wonderland which is Europe. And they say, okay, let's listen to the people which preach to build higher walls, to build higher barriers, and to populist voices that may be threatened from the dangers from the outside. And this phenomena, if it grows, can have a very problematic effect on our future. A lot of it also has to do with global warming, and just lately, for example, former Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou said that, and I think we are already at this point, but he said at some point humanity will understand that all of our problems are secondary to the need to face the destruction because of climate change. And the EU Commissioner for Human Aid just said recently also that climate change is the biggest challenge that mankind and humanity are facing today. So what do we do about it? And this is why I believe that today, more than ever, Israel and Europe should work together. First of all, we have to rebuild or accelerate even more the foundations of our cooperation. We need government, yes, also diplomats, but also other people from government. We need academia, students, and we need private sector. All of them have to work together to connect the innovation ecosystems, to bring students together, to work on global warming, to work on new water methods, on energy methods, energy efficiency. If only Israel works on its own, only some Europeans work on their own, I'm convinced that this will not be enough. We have to connect our ecosystems to even a higher level than exists today. And only if we manage that, I believe we will be able to bring some of the solutions that are so badly needed to our region. I don't want to leave you with a pessimistic note because, again, if I go to the beginning of my presentation, Europe was built on this very strong interests, which were coal and steel, and then grew up to economic cooperation, trade, common currency. Today, these common interests is to find real solutions for the problems of drought, of global warming, of energy efficiency, also for IT problems, health problems. And if Europe will reunite around this, and Israel will reunite with Europe around it, I'm convinced that we will be able, through the young generation that here is in the public and the wonderful young generation that I meet daily in visits to universities in Cyprus or in Israel, if this young generation works together, I'm convinced that they will find solutions to these problems. Again, this is where I'm so much inspired by my parents. They left everything in a very difficult situation in Europe only 50 years ago. It was after the Shoah, after many people thought, it'll be very hard to rebuild everything. But yet, they came here, and together with many people here in the crowd, build a wonderful scientific basis for Israel, build a very strong cooperation with Europe. And this inspiration from my parents, from my father and from my mother, is what brings me even more to think that we can do it in the future if we work together with Europe. I believe it's important for Israel, it's important for Europe, but more so, as I said, I believe that this cooperation between Israel and Europe, and of course with other players in the world, is crucial for the future of the global order and the world as a whole. And I want to conclude by thanking very much my parents and congratulate my father. Happy birthday. In my name, and Osnat's, my wife's name, my children, Neta, Tomer, and Yuval. In all our names, happy birthday. May all your wishes come true. And I really want to thank you very much. And I believe that we have to work more so, and if any of you want to do us while I'm in Cyprus, I invite you to be in contact with me to try to find ways to do it in the near future. Thank you very much.